Like, do you see me as unreasonably black and white?
You kind of fall under the category of like mostly isn't good enough. If we ever reach a point where that's the reality, where no animals are being consumed for food, it's going to be because society, by and large, shifts to a minimal meat diet or to a minimal animal products diet, and over time it becomes obsolete.
This is the story of the gingerbread man.
What's hard about that is that it's not, in my opinion, sustainable. No person, maybe not no person, I'm not going to be an absolutist about it, but it's very, it's not practical or sustainable over a very long period of time. For me, I sustained it for 10 years and then it became unsustainable. I know you gave up 10 years to veganism.
What's up? This is Jesse from 10 Years.
Giving 10 years of my life to the movement. There was a time where I was so vegan. I have watched every vegan video, every vegan debate. I have heard every single argument. Vegan for a very long time. There's nothing I haven't heard. There's not that many people that are on there really giving their experience of what it's like to burn out after 10 years. Very few people that have done as long as I did. 10 years is a fucking long time. I did it for 10 fucking years and I'm like, I'm done. I didn't crack one day after 10 years of like, I really want to eat a steak. If half of the people that are coming at me right now knew what it was like to be vegan for an entire decade, what I have an issue with after 10 years of being vegan, I was vegan for 10 years.
I'm not sitting here giving you shit for your 10 years.
All right. So, Blair White, you wanted it. You asked for it. You said it over and over again. So I'm going to give it to you. Something fitting for you. The Big 10 medal. Vegan for 10 years. Just for you. I hereby bestow upon Miss Blair White all the rights, honors, and privileges pertaining thereto, having been vegan for 10 years and then giving it up when it began to feel too difficult and too tiresome to keep going. Signed, someone important who won't ask challenging and sincere questions like Isaac named the trait Brown. So, there's your medal, Blair. Eat it.
What's hard about that is that it's not, in my opinion, sustainable. I don't think the all or nothing attitude is productive. Your middle point and your point of which you believe that you're being the most consistent ethically is no animal products ever. Mine, after 10 years of being the same, is a small amount of animal products to keep my health decent. That's my line.
Look, folks, what do we mean when we ask whether something is sustainable? In this case, whether or not veganism is sustainable. What do we really mean? What are we thinking of when we're asking that question? Veganism is naturally connected to environmental concerns. Are we really thinking of something like a natural resource that can be used up, depleted, to the point where it's not possible to exploit it anymore? Is that something that's really relevant to discussions of whether or not we can choose soy milk over regular milk on a daily basis? Is the concern for keeping a vegan diet for 10 years really whether or not we're going to run out of soy milk? I don't think that makes any sense. In fact, the way I think we should actually think about sustainability, thinking about how can we keep up with veganism over time, whether or not what we want to practice, anything we want to practice, anything we want to do, any kind of practice we want to keep up is going to hold up over time. I think we should actually think of a bridge. You can ask questions of sustainability in terms of a natural resource, you can. But I prefer to think about it in terms of a bridge sustaining itself over time, keeping its form, being able to bear weight over time. Whether or not some kind of practice, some idea you have for how to go forward will actually hold up, will actually stay true to form, whether or not it will literally collapse on itself, and you'll end up falling off in that sense. Now, Blair White complains that the idea of eating zero meat is unsustainable and unrealistic. And that allowing people to have a little bit of meat is more sustainable, more realistic, makes more sense for the way to go for veganism. Now look, if you're building a bridge, you have to have a stable foundation. What is the foundation of the idea of being vegan, having zero meat, versus the idea of having a little bit of meat? Which has a stronger foundation which to stand upon? Zero is a hard limit. Does that matter? If you eat any meat and your idea is that I'm going to have zero meat, I'm going to be completely vegan, zero meat is the baseline. There's a clear delineation of what success and failure is there. Whether or not you've gone past what you said you were going to do, whether or not you've fallen off. In some ways, that's actually pretty sturdy. What about the idea of having a little bit of meat? First of all, what does a little bit of meat mean? And is it the same for every person? For every situation? Is that really a stable foundation, or is that completely vague and something that's definitely going to fall apart? A bridge that is basically going to collapse really easily. Blair White, you tell me, you were vegan for 10 years. You ate no meat for 10 years. And from what I can tell, there was an ideological aspect to that. The idea of having no meat does, in a sense, rest on an ideological principle. A coherent ideological principle. What about the idea of having a little meat? Is there any ideological principle? Is there any belief, whether it's ecology, whether or not it's the rights of animals, that stands behind any of that? And does that make it, by definition, a weaker idea?
It's like willing to support it on what level? It's like, I don't support...
With rape, when you recognize that's wrong, you don't think any level of rape is okay.
Think about that, Blair. You are switching from something that had a serious ideological, ecological principle backbone and had a really clear line delineation of what is success and what is failure. You're switching from that to something that, as far as I can tell, has very little, if no, ethical backbone. Clearly doesn't really give a crap about ecology. You're switching to that. Not to mention the fact that really your principle, the idea of what is little meat, is already seriously vague. And throw in the fact that given this video, it's obvious that you're not really interested in listening to any ethical arguments. You're not really willing to think about this anymore, to be honest. And given that, let's be honest, some of the characters you hang out with aren't the most vegan positive people.
Here's what I've always thought veganism was to me. It was doing the most that you can. That's what I always saw veganism as. It's like doing the most that you can. And at this point, after doing, I'm still doing the most that I can, always. That's always what I've done. Sometimes doing like the most of what you can is enough. My choice to be as ethical as I can be is really all you can ask of people.
Look, Blair, I get what you're saying. But I think you should also acknowledge that there's a way in which that statement, that you're doing the most you can right now, there's a sense in which that is completely intellectually dishonest. Because again, as you said over and over and over again in this video, as you talk down to Isaac Brown about how long you've been vegan, that is an important fact that you should acknowledge. You were vegan for 10 years. Don't pretend that eating a little bit of meat is the most that you could ever do, that anyone could ever expect from you. And, you completely ignore it in this video. You completely sidestep it. But Isaac's recommendation, his suggestion, is actually pretty reasonable, especially if the ethics, if the ecology did actually matter to you at one point in a real way. All he asked was whether or not you explored as many possibilities as you could. Whether it's asking other registered dietitians, whether it's saying, I'm going to eat a little bit of meat now, but I'm still looking for the answer, how I can be vegan, instead of saying, I'm just completely giving up. That is not an unreasonable suggestion. Especially, again, if the ethics mattered to you, if the ecology, the concerns about ecology going forward actually mattered to you at one point. and given the fact that you were committed to this for as long as you have been. Those are not unreasonable suggestions to make, to expect from you.
It just so happens that the most of what I can is no longer satisfying to people like you. Even if I ate meat for the rest of my fucking life, even if I went on an all meat diet right now, from now until the time I'm 80, I will have still done more in those 10 years than anyone I know.
The excuse making in this video is honestly unreal, and I think you should be kind of ashamed, Blair White.
Here, let me ask you a question. If we were able to, which we are able to get a registered dietitian or a few of them to help you troubleshoot your way to a proper vegan diet, would that change your mind? And if the answer is no, then it seems like we need to have a debate about the ethics and whether this should actually matter to you.
Like I said to a few questions in the live stream, I don't really think that at this point I would consider going back. Like I said, things change. Maybe it'll change. But at this point, having identified the issue and fixed it, I don't really feel like going back into troubleshooting mode. I don't really feel like going back when the problem is fixed. I fixed the issue. It's like,
you fixed the problem. How can you say that? Sure, I understand. You felt crappy and now you feel better. But what was the cost? You ended up having to give up something that I assume was on some level a meaningful commitment to ecology, to the rights of animals. You gave up something that you did every day for 10 years. A real commitment. You know, if I gave up fitness, I do fitness a few days a week. If I gave that up, if I had to give that up, someone told me you couldn't do that anymore. And there was a point where I was so injured that I almost did. That would hurt. That would hurt a lot. I wouldn't come on camera and say I fixed any problem. That's something worth being humble about, Blair. More than you were in this live stream. But no, you fixed the problem. You subtracted it away. It's gone. Kiss it. It's out of here. And that's fixing the problem to you. Yeah, I gotta wrap this video up. I'm done.
I feel like I'm at a point where I can't necessarily do it all, but I can do a lot, and I'm gonna do a lot.
I think your goalposts for what is a little meat and your standards for this idea that you're gonna be mostly vegan are gonna shift really quick. Forget 10 years. I think in the next year, this is gonna shift a lot for you. I think it's gonna become a whatever diet, because I think in some ways that's what you really want. But you know what, Blair? As I've said, you were vegan for 10 years, and as soon as I find it, I am conferring upon you this silly and jokey medal. You've been vegan a lot longer than I have. And this medal may be fake, it may be kind of a jab at you. But honestly, Blair, if you can do 10 years on this some meat diet and maintain the same standard that you claim you're going to hold yourself to today, that it doesn't turn into just eat whatever I want, eat meat whenever I want diet, feel free to turn this in for something real. I'll get you something really nice, hon, because I would love to see that. It would be amazing to see that. If I'm a betting man, I just don't think it's going to happen. And that's all I got to say.